One of the questions that I also wanted to answer was in regards to zoning. Now, once again, this is not an attempt to give legal advice. I just want to kind of give you an experience of something that happened to one of my mentoring students. And I thought that this would be the golden opportunity to present this to you all, just to get your wheels turning. You know that I love thought-provoking things, and this was a good idea to do that. And so, in regards to zoning laws, we don't really think about zoning laws a lot of times when we start talking about opening a home-based business, whether we live in an apartment, whether we live in a development, a house, a condo, cabin, mobile trailer, it doesn't matter. Bottom line is you have to make sure that you are within your legal limits to open up a business at home. I mean, it's one of those things, once again, that we don't think about, especially when we are talking about an online business. So let me tell you what happened. And so my mentoring student actually got a six needle embroidery machine this past September. And then she joined my mentoring program this past October. And this is a situation where she is in an apartment unit. And so she has someone next to her, above her, and under her. Okay. And she's an at home person. Okay. And so, what happened here was, in the process of her learning her embroidery machine, those of you know it takes a lot of times to learn it. You have to do things over and over and over and over again. And I guess she really didn't consider the vigorousness, the sound of the embroidery machine. Anyhow, one of her tenants reported her to the renting office. And she was very upset about that. She was very upset that, here it was, she wasn't bothering anyone, doing something from the comfort of her own home. And here it was, one of her tenants reported her. So then I asked her, because she called me, she was very upset. I asked her, I said, well, what time of day are you embroidering? Because I know for a fact that there were times that I was up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't do that now, but there were times where when I first started my embroidery business, I would be up 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning embroidering stuff. And so, but I have a home and I don't live next to anyone. There's not a home, like I don't live in a townhome. I live in a single dwelling and there's no one next to me. And so, if you live in an apartment, then you might be disruptive to someone if they're hearing an embroidery machine all hours of the night. Well, she said, no, it's during the day. And I thought, well, geez, why would it be a problem? Until she told me the whole story. The whole story is one of her neighbors, I don't know which side it was, but one of her neighbors actually worked at nighttime. And this person came home in the morning. Well, guess what? When they come home in the morning, they go to sleep. Well, guess what my embroidery mentoring student was doing? She was actually embroidering while they were sleeping. So they were hearing the embroidery machine and got very annoyed with her. But instead of confronting her, they went straight to they went straight to the renting office. To make it matters worse, my embroidery mentoring student started selling her services. She posted, they have some kind of community board, and she posted a flyer of some sort in the community board. Well, that was strike number 2. Not only did she not have permission to do this, apparently, but apparently it was actually against her lease. It was something in her lease that you could not have an embroidery business. And she was so upset. She was so upset behind that, because her thought was, well, now what? What do I do? I can't afford to buy a house. I live here and I have this thousands of dollars machine. And I thought to say to her, you know what? That is something really that you should have checked out before you decided to open a business. But now is not the time to do that, because she already have it and you can't return the machine. And so she has a dilemma that, number one, now she has to now go to all of her neighbors and see, and now she can't really technically have a business in her apartment because it was against the rules of her lease. And so that don't only happen with apartments though. One of the things that you want to consider when you even live in a community, you live in a development, especially if you live in a community where there are homeowners association fees, HOAs, you want to check and see if you are able to have an embroidery business or any kind of business, not just an embroidery business, because if there is some kind of rule that you cannot have a home-based business because they're concerned about traffic or it's a residential area, you can get a citation for that. You can get a fine for that. And so, again, it's one of those things that we don't think about, but it's one of those things that is your responsibility to look into. if you are going to open up a business. And I know people will say to me, well, Candia, it's my home. It is your home, but you don't live on earth by yourself. And so, unless you live in a situation where you land and land and land, and you absolutely have no one to answer to, then sure. But, or you have a situation where my development don't have, rules like that. But you have to find out first before you just jump in there, because you may have to make other arrangements, or you may have to pay some fines that you may incur just because you jumped into that.